you see, in relation to science, there are different opinions. One idea in the philosophy of science, there's science and then there's the philosophy of science. Yes. So in the area of the philosophy of science, one position is called instrumentalism. So instrumentalism means that our scientific theories, they don't really tell us what about the world, but rather they tell us about our sensory experience of the world, like what the world is in and of itself, its own existence. That science is not about that. It's about only how we experience the world through our senses, and then we make some calculations. So science doesn't tell us anything for definite about the world, but it just gives us some models which are instrumental. We can use those models as instruments for manipulating the world around us and making predictions about what might happen if we do this or what might happen if we do that. Yes. So it's their predictive models, and so they're just instrumental. So this position is called instrumentalism. So then there's another position, and it is called structuralism, where science doesn't tell exactly the details of the world, but there must be some structural congruence between our model and the world. There's certain structures in our model which are really there in the real world. Otherwise, our theories wouldn't work when we apply them. So that's the structuralist position. And the structuralist position also has two parts. One is epistemic structuralism, which says that actually there's some relation, but our understanding is not the exact. It's just the way that we try to know something about the structure of the world. But then the other position is that our scientific models are exactly the same as the world. And this is a position that many people have taken today. They think that the laws of science are out there in nature. Like the world is being governed by our equations on the page. These laws, these equations, these laws are actually governing the world. But actually, these equations, these are our own abstractions. They just describe the relationships between measurable variables. So they don't actually, scientific equations don't deal with causation. They deal with correlation. It's not the same thing. The correlation between different variables that we can measure. And so they are abstract models that we can use to predict. But they don't really tell us about the true nature of the world. So, our mind, when it is unsteady, always makes abstractions. That means you see something, but you focus on one part of it and you take it out. And you just look at that. And so that's what we're doing in science. What is the distance? The space. Okay, we abstract space. We have an abstract idea of time as well, and then we make a graph, distance and time on the graph. But our graph and the reality is two different things completely. Because on our graph, on our time graph, the past, present and future is all there, simultaneously existing. But is that true in real life? No. What is time? On your graph, all the time, past, present, future is existing. But this graph actually makes no sense. Why is that? Because, what is time? Here's the time graph, and you draw your graph, and it shows the acceleration, how something is moving through time. So if you're moving through time, then at what speed are you moving? It's an interesting question. Conceptually speaking, look, you can say, I move from here to there at so many kilometers an hour. Right? But time is also moving, because there's now 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock. So you're moving through time. But at what speed are you going through time? Because speed is distance over time. You need another time to explain that first time. Right?
Yes.
But then you'll need another time to explain that time and another time. So it becomes just... it becomes infinite regress, which is not a logically sound proposition. Infinite regress is not a logically sound proposition. So what happens is that when in science we abstract from the world, our abstraction adds things which are not in the world. And our abstraction also leaves things behind which are not in our abstraction, which are in the world but not there. Okay? Let's take another example. Our model of the atoms, right? What color are atoms? Atoms have no color. They're colorless. What flavor are they?
No flavor.
No flavor. What sound do they make? Nothing. So atoms actually have no color, no sound, no flavor, anything. Okay? Got it. According to our mathematical model, because they just have particles which have location and momentum and so on, right? But it doesn't have taste, smell, or anything like that. But everything is made of these things. So then we say, well, how do we experience taste, smell, sound? And then the scientists will say, well, actually that's not actually in the world, that's not in the atoms, that's just in your mind. Okay? And you say, okay, that's good. But then you ask them, well, what's the mind? They say, well, it's these atoms. Wait a minute. If your mind is just these atoms and there's no taste and smell, when I asked you how come this strawberry is red and it tastes strawberry flavor, you said it was just in my mind. Okay, but then you say, well, how is it in the mind? Because it's the same atoms and they have no taste or smell or anything like this. So in this way, it's like you ask a question and the scientists sweep it under the carpet over there. And then when you ask, what about this, then they sweep it over there. You see? So when you look at the whole scientific edifice as a whole, it's full of, though it's useful for doing things like building rockets or some pacemaker to keep your heart going, it's useful for making machines that can do things which are useful for us in just a practical sense in life. But the actual concepts behind the science is very limited, very imperfect, and actually full of contradictions. And that's why no one can make a theory of everything. There's a theory of electromagnetism, there's a theory of the weak forces and the strong forces and the theory of gravity. But when you put all the four theories together on the page, they actually contradict each other. Right?
Yes, since the beginning of science.
Yeah, they say that there are four forces in the world: the weak atomic force, the strong atomic force, electromagnetism, and gravity. But the actual calculations for all of these forces, actually, they contradict each other, and they can't put them together. Why? Because these are theories, which are abstractions. They don't exactly map reality itself, but they're useful instruments for us. But it's not only instrumental, there is some relationship, but it's not the whole picture. So the thing is to stop your mind from going into hyperventilating on all of these theories. You have to philosophically understand their limitations. You see? Because if you have this idea that science is unlimited, if we just keep thinking about it, we're going to figure out everything, then you're addicted. You see? But when you realize, actually, these are our mental abstractions, which are limited because our minds are limited. And they cannot give the answer to everything. We cannot explain what is consciousness. Right? The truth of the matter is, the only thing that is truly known to you is your own subjective experience. Now explain that scientifically. You cannot. No one can explain consciousness. Even the common persons think, it comes from the brain. But actually all the scientists, if you go to university and study the philosophy of mind and neurology, all the scientists will actually tell you, no, we have no idea how consciousness comes about. We don't know. We're still trying to figure it out. So the first thing is to philosophically recognize the limitations of the scientific methodology. That it will not give you the answer to the big questions in life. Who am I? what is this world, where did it come from, what is God, it's not useful for that. It's useful for making mechanical things. It's like a spanner.
Yes, because the first question, the origin of universe, we can, until 1 second before the explosion, but before we have no idea. In spite of our milliards of
yes, even the idea that you know 1 second before, that's quite an ambitious claim. And that could also be disputed as well. But there's an idea that we know up until a certain point, but then after that you cannot, because anyway the laws break down. They're not applicable in the earliest moment, So first, know the parameters, the jurisdiction of science itself. Just like if you have a spanner, you can change the wheel on your car, right? Just undo the nuts and change the wheel on your car. But with the spanner, you can't do whatever, brain surgery. Right? Because it's too gross. You can, we'll just cut off the person's head and get the spanner, dip it in, stir it around. Right? It's not gonna, because the instrument itself is too gross. So the actual scientific methodology itself is too gross to penetrate the mysteries of reality. So for that you need something more fine. And that instrument God has given you. And that is your own chitta. Your own subconscious mind is a fine instrument. But for the common person, it's in a state of disorder. It's in a distorted state. That's what you're saying. My mind keeps thinking about this. It's out of control. So if you meditate every day, if you pray, if you sit, and you vibrate the names of God, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, then these disordered waves in your psychological body will begin to blend with the vibration of God's name. And God's name will make your mind peaceful and clear. And then by that subtle consciousness you can penetrate into some of the mysteries of life. So I am praying to Krishna that he will bring peace of mind to you. Know the limitations of the scientific methodology and take up the actional methodology by which you can discover the answers to the questions that you have.
Yes.
Okay. Someone may say, we are limited beings and God is unlimited. So how could the limited being know the unlimited? Okay, good question. Yeah. But just as the question is very simple, there's a very simple answer. And the answer is that because God is unlimited, he can do anything. If he could not reveal himself to the limited being, he would not be unlimited. So because God is unlimited, by his grace, he can reveal himself to the limited being. So logically and scientifically, that is indisputable, that the way to know the higher reality is to seek the grace of that higher being. And so when we sit, chant, we meditate, the mind becomes peaceful, and then we can receive that grace and enlightenment. So there is a material science, and this is the spiritual science. And just as material science can give us, we can make predictions which are reliable. So in the spiritual science, we can also make reliable predictions. So I am making a reliable prediction. If you do what I say, you will become peaceful and you will realize God. And I know because when I was very young man, I met my guru. And I lived with him for many years, and he trained me in this science and showed me how to practice. And I followed everything, and the predicted result came. So I have realization. I know that it works. Otherwise, I wouldn't be wasting my time going everywhere, explaining it to everyone. How much did you pay for this seminar today?
0.
Nothing. Yeah.
Time.
So why am I going everywhere, giving my time for nothing? Why? Because it is a service to God. And the service to God is always done out of love. never in exchange for anything. This is the problem. People become disenchanted with religion because actually they're not trying to follow religion. They're trying to do business with God. They go to church or their mosque or whatever, or their temple, and they say, "Oh God, you are my spiritual Amazon, and I'm just making my orders. There's a few things I want to add to the basket, God. Add this to my shopping cart." And they're just demanding things from God. This is not religion. The religious path is to live a life to serve God without requesting anything in return. Pure love. Unconditional, unmotivated. And only a person whose heart becomes fully free from reward-seeking mentality will get the highest reward of entering into the kingdom of God. When you seek reward, then you just get karma. And when you give up the reward-seeking mentality and act only for the pleasure of God, then we become eligible, we become qualified candidates to be transferred into that realm where there's no business in the spiritual world. Everything is love there. So we have to become eligible candidates here. And the wonderful thing is that people think religion is, if you believe in this, then when you die you find out whether it's true or not. That's not very good. That's like a lottery. Yeah. Right? Everyone buys a ticket, and when the day comes you find out whether you bought the right ticket. So then maybe a Christian, he dies and he's in heaven, that's cool. And the Muslim is like, I bought the wrong ticket. The Buddhist is like, bought the wrong ticket. So no, religion is not like a lottery, a gamble. We should understand the philosophical principles clearly. And if we'll practice, we can experience the divine realm while we're still alive. You don't have to wait until you die. Why do you have to wait until you die? You're not this body. Whether this body is alive or dead makes no difference. Why is there this condition that only when you die, that's when you find out? This body is always dead. It was never alive. You try. Just cut off a finger, put it on the table, poke it with a needle and see if you can feel anything. The body is always dead. It only feels to be alive because the soul is present. So whether the soul is connected with the body or disconnected from the body is not the make or break condition on realizing God. So we have to realize God in this life. And if we serve and come to the level of pure devotion and realize God in this life, then we're qualified when we give up this body to go to God. It's not like you live your whole life in ignorance and then suddenly, boom, you're enlightened just by dying. Dying is nothing. Dying is just change of body. It doesn't make a big difference to your consciousness. If you waste your life and you die, then your next life you'll just be the same loser with the same ideas, doing the same stupid things. It's not a big change. So we have to try to transform, be reformed, overcome our corruption, and become purified in this life. So it's a little bit challenging, it's a little bit difficult, but if we apply ourselves and we have guidance of a qualified guru, then we'll see the results. Because the result is also not one day you know nothing and the next day you see God. It's not like that. There are stages. Slowly you understand that you're not this body. Slowly you begin to see how everything is connected and that God is in charge of everything and present somehow. That presence is, and then slowly the form of Krishna appears, and then slowly the qualities of Krishna appear, and then slowly the associates of Krishna and his Dham, Vrindavan, and they're appearing slowly like this, and before the perfection comes. So everyone has to work hard in life. Life is a struggle, but we should put our main effort in working hard to attain our spiritual perfection. This is where our main effort should go. That effort is never lost. The effort that you make in material things, you build up a big business or whatever, and then one day the business fails. Right? whatever. The material things are always lost. And when death comes, then everything is lost. That's guarantee, 100% guarantee for everyone. This is the news, everyone. Everything that you know and everything that you own and everything that you've done and everywhere, it's all going to be over. Game over. Right? 100% fact. But whatever progress we make in spiritual life, that's with us forever. So if you only get halfway there in this life, in the next life, you'll start from the halfway mark. So the spiritual path is all profit and no loss. And the material path is all loss and no profit. Actually, it becomes a debt. You get karmic debt that you have to pay back in your next life. Huh? All the people that you gave problems in this life to, in your next life, they'll all come and give you problems. Like that. So it's not even goes to zero, it goes into the negative. So the human being is a person who can consider these things. A real human is a person who can contemplate. Or today, what we were discussing, and I mentioned Dante. Have you seen that statue? Oh, we're in France, right? So you should know. Auguste Rodin. So Auguste Rodin. Le Pinceau. Who is that? Who is Le Pinceau? You know? It's Dante. It's Dante. It's Rodin made this statue. It's Dante Alighieri. It's from he made one very big statue called the Gates of Hell, and on the top is this, and then he began to take small details from that statue and make them separately. So there are many separate statues, but they're all fine details from a larger statue based on Dante's Inferno. So this Le Penseur is Dante himself, Dante Alighieri. What is he thinking? What is he thinking? He went down to the different levels of punishment, the karmic reactions, if you like. And there he saw Francesca di Rimini and Paolo da Malatesta, an Italian couple. And she was married, but she fell in love with her husband's brother. And one day they were reading together the legend of King Arthur. And it got to the romantic part between where the queen of King Arthur, Guinevere, she falls in love with the knight Lancelot. And just when it got to the part where then they were feeling the same feelings, right? She's married, but she has attraction to someone else, and she's reading about someone who's married and having attraction to someone, and it's awakening those feelings. And then they were reading together, and they just turn, and they're just about to kiss. And that is Auguste Rodin, you know? The kiss? The statue? You know the statue? You are French, you know? There's a couple, they're embracing, and they're just about, but the lips are not touching. The lips are, they're just about to kiss. You raise your hand if you know something about French culture and art. And here in France, am I speaking on deaf ears? So they're just about to kiss, but the lips are not touching. Why? Because the brother jumped out from behind the curtain and stabbed them to death. Right? And then they both went to hell. So when Dante was traveling through the levels of hell, he saw them there. And then the Penseur is thinking about the consequences of life. The way that we live has consequences. It's not. Don't think that no one's watching. Everything we do, God is seeing everything. Not only God, the demigods also, the angels and Indra and Surya Dev and Vayu. The air is seeing, the sun is seeing, the moon is seeing. All the devatas of nature are seeing. And so we cannot escape the consequences of our actions. Now Dante was a very religious person. But when he was a young man, he was a writer, fiction writer. And he wrote romantic novels. And after seeing Francesca de Rimini and Paolo de Malatesta in hell because they read a romantic novel that made them sin or about to sin. Then he thought, oh my God, I've written all these romantic poems. How many thousands of people have I made sin? So if they've gone into a suffering condition, oh my God, what is going to happen to me? And that is le penseur. Art is interesting. By art we can express many. So, humanity, to be a human being is not to run around like a chicken with the head cut off every day, not thinking about what we're doing. But human life is to stop and consider, what am I doing? Who am I? Why am I here? And what will be the future consequences of my lifestyle and my activities? And then, having evaluated the situation, to make an adjustment that we don't go down, that we'll have a bright future, that our prospect is something glorious instead of something tragic. So this is why it's necessary to hear from Guru. When there is a saint who has realization of God, when we listen to them, their message, we have to take it into our heart and think about it deeply. And by deliberating on it, we muster up some determination to make the adjustments in our life that we need to do, that our future is not tragic, but our future becomes glorious. Because every soul, every one of us has a glorious prospect. And that is the eternal life of pure love for God. But God has given us a gift, and that is free will. And so we have to, instead of being spaced out and distracted, we have to gather our thoughts together. And then, instead of the body demanding from us how to live, I need this, I want this, the soul has to exert his will over the body. But you can't do that in a state of distraction. So you have to become le penseur. And think and gather your thoughts together and muster up as much determination as you can to reorientate the direction of your life. And when you do that, that is called surrender. Sharanagati. Surrender isn't like just waving a white flag. Okay, it's over now, I give up. Surrender is something that takes extreme effort and determination. It's not entirely passive. There's a certain thing, we have to accept God's mercy. We accept that what comes to us in life is God's grace. That's the passive thing. But bhakti has the nivrita atmaka chestarup and pravrita atmaka chestarup. The things that you have to be detached from and give up, like offenses and sins and so on. But it has the pravrita atmaka chestarup, the actual positive endeavors that we have to do as well. So everyone, remember this and think and develop, gather together your determination to march in the right direction in life. Gaur Premanande!